It's happening every day in Minnesota.
He only shot once. Close range.
Families experiencing the trauma of gun violence.
If you love him and you care about that person, you're gonna feel something.
So what is the cost of gunfire?
If we don't heal, we'll continue to hurt one another.
Over the next hour, we'll talk with people working to make a difference.
It costs the lives of people, but the livelihoods of people.
Hear from families getting support as they process the pain.
Very sadly, most people want to jump us through, you got 2 weeks to grieve.
Learn about the fund established to lessen the burden.
You shouldn't have to plan a funeral for your children. They should be planning yours.
You'll hear from healthcare workers crushed by the crisis.
I feel that the general public probably doesn't have any idea of just how bad it is.
And be inspired by survivors using their strength to push boundaries.
No matter what life throws at you, you don't have to be an angry person.
And those finding ways to help prevent gun violence.
I had a passion for basketball, and after I became a survivor of gun violence, I realized the two can combine.
Hello, and thank you for joining us for this in-depth look at the cost of gunfire. I'm WCCO News senior investigative reporter Jennifer Mayerle. A year ago, we embarked on a mission with a goal of hearing the real stories about gun violence in our community, the impact it has on the survivors and the people left behind. Photojournalist Verdon and I set out to share the stories that haven't been told. So far this year, at least 132 people have been shot in Minneapolis and St. Paul. That's more than one person a day. Last year, that number climbed to 558 in just the Twin Cities. So what is the cost of gunfire? It costs roughly $22,000 to treat a patient with a gunshot wound at Hennepin Healthcare. In 2022, they admitted 230 people. Last year, it was 179. But those are just numbers. Each person a bullet pierces faces recovery, and often they don't do it alone. Family and friends endure the trauma too. As we found, behind every bullet is a real person who knows firsthand the true cost of gunfire. Xavier Brown says he went down the only road he knew to follow. Today, he's living with his choices.
Only being 22 and been shot 11 times. It's more of a lot of gut decisions that got me here.
Xavier is in a wheelchair, a T7 paraplegic, after taking that 11th bullet at the end of 2020.
He only shot once. Close range, dropped the clip, picked it up, and ran off.
He thinks he was targeted. What age did you join a gang?
I was at 6, 7 when I joined.
He says he wanted to be independent, and without a father figure, he turned to the streets. What was that life like?
Stressful. Every day having to look over your shoulder or having to worry about going to jail and not having enough money to bail out.
The first time he was shot, he was only 13 or 14.
I say right before I had my daughter in 2014.
What happened, or where were you shot?
I was shot in the leg with a 12-gauge shotgun. That was the very first one that I got shot with. Back then, was looking for money to try to come up and was car shopping and ripping and running the streets, stealing cars, like just doing dumb stuff. And karma caught up to me very quick that day.
He says he was shot several more times over the course of about 2 years.
I was like a target practice. Back 2 years straight, I was back and forth in the hospital from getting shot left and right. The recovery was just like, I couldn't even get the opportunity to recover. Kept on getting shot.
What toll must that have taken on not just your body, but your mind and your well-being and everything else?
The toll, I'm surprised I could sit here and smile right now. Like, at moments I do be wanting to like just give up, but I know that there's something out there for me.
That something for Xavion is his family, who haven't left his side, his then girlfriend, now fiance, and his mom, Maine.
If you love him and you care about that person, you're going to feel something. And that's going to change something in your head and in your heart last picture him actually standing with his legs. Me and him took together. He feels so bad. But I mean, your life choices came up on your mama, your sister, and your grandma, the ones that was there for you all the time immediate. Now we got to pay for you being shot, and that hurt you. I know it do. This is a good one that I like too.
But Xavion isn't the only one hurting. The reality is, it's painful for everyone.
The person that got shot be like, well, I'm the one that got shot. Y'all ain't got to deal with this. Yes, we do. Yes, we do. We had to deal with his mood swings. We had to deal with him sometimes just snapping out the blue, like, and we just had to accept it because he dealing with something.
Add a bit more energy.
Maine tries to focus on how she can help her son. At times, when she lets her mind think about what's happened, it can get pretty dark.
And it's like somebody dying. It never heals. So I'm not going to ever say it's okay or I'm fine or it don't hurt no more. He may not be dead, but it's a totally different life than what he had. And it hurts. And it's different.
I think about people whose bodies and their minds are never the same.
Pastor Edrin Williams' Sanctuary Covenant Church is across the street from the Winter gas station where Xavion was shot. The community calls the spot at Broadway and Lyndale in North Minneapolis Murder Station.
I see regularly young men up and down the street here, many of them with the colostomy bag or young guys who should be out running around playing sports, like pushing one of their friends in a wheelchair, and you just wonder about how their quality of life is impacted forever. That kind of cost.
And I feel a real burden these days, Sanctuary.
Williams incorporates the reality of living in the city into his Sunday sermons.
In a world where raising our kids seems harder by the week, I thank God for his spirit.
While trying to cast a light on a hopeful future.
So that we might be built up to live the lives that God has called us to.
And says the church shows up for families in the wake of gun violence.
Checking in on moms who've lost sons. We're providing diapers to adults who can't go to the bathroom on their own anymore. We're financially supporting families who can't make ends meet because someone who's a breadwinner is their life has been impacted. That's a regular thing for us.
He sees the pain, witnesses the struggle, and wonders with all the gun violence if people take time to really heal.
If we don't heal, we'll continue to hurt one another.
People are carrying them with them.
Hermita McGlory counsels individuals and families impacted by gunfire about a mile away from the church at North Point.
It costs the lives of people, but the livelihoods of people.
Those triggered by the sound of gunfire, someone who's lost a loved one to gun violence. She also works with people who have been shot.
We talk about living life again and making moves and trying to restore, reframe, and redirect your life. It's deep work. We have to probe. We have to begin to understand how we are patient with the stories and the narratives of these people.
She works with people to get uncomfortable, to dig deep and try to heal.
What were some of their childhood trauma experiences? Why would we have to do problem solving with guns? Then we begin to have people understand that although they have been a victim of this level of violence, they don't necessarily have to continue to let this direct the rest of their lives.
Do you worry about the people that don't get help after experiencing gun violence?
Most
and what
definitely,
could happen?
most definitely, because it is the level of overwhelming emotional experience that is tragic, is traumatic. It's not only anxiety provoking and provokes depression, but it can alter just the rest of the life of a person.
Xavion lives in constant pain. He deals with leg spasms, fights depression, and is reminded daily of the last bullet that pierced his arm.
Frustrated. This pain is like something that's so unbelievable. Like, it keeps you up at night. Like, even if you've been up for a week, this pain will keep you awake. It won't let you get a wink. It just reminds me more and more, and I try to forget it, but That's one thing that my body's not gonna let me do, is forget that. Sometimes I just leave him because I get tired of playing with him.
He knows he could benefit from therapy, but says it's not his focus right now. What for you is a good day?
That first breath in the morning, to know I accomplished at least a couple of my goals, making sure that I eat at least twice a day, that's a good day for me.
Xavion does want what's happened in his life to help others. He hopes other young people will see joining a gang is not worth it. There are places to turn to, support groups with people who understand. Ahead, we'll share one family's journey to hope and healing after losing their son to gun violence. And we'll share the state fund designed to help decrease the financial cost of gunfire for families. We know the cost of gunfire is having a real impact on people across Minnesota. Most homicides in the state are by gunfire. Losing someone you love in that way leaves a pain that can be hard to process. That's where groups like Survivor Resources come in. The nonprofit was formed to support families like the Harrigans, whose son was shot and killed in 2019. For the first time, they share their journey through the grief and the support they found to help heal.
He was very young.
Reflecting,
you can see him as a child fanning a reindeer.
I love reindeers.
On moments with their son.
And there's a picture of him and his mother outside of this building in Germany.
That still bring them joy.
Finally got a job as a paramedic with the St. Paul Fire Department, and he was so proud of that.
John and Sandy Harrigan's son Tom was off duty when he was shot and killed inside his East Side home in September of 2019.
My world ended. I temporarily lost my faith in God, so I spent months trying to understand what did I do wrong.
The firefighter and decorated veteran who served in Iraq and Afghanistan as a combat medic was 36 years old.
At this moment, emotionally, you've been run over by a bus, and everything in your life without a killer, your ability to function is falling apart.
And yet they say, while people mean well, those around them couldn't understand their pain.
Very sadly, most people want to jump us through, you got 2 weeks to grieve.
So they leaned on each other and soon found a place where people truly understood how they were feeling. Survivor Resources is a nonprofit dedicated to helping people process their grief together.
5 new people showed up.
Everyone in their weekly support group had lost someone they love to homicide.
But I don't know how I would have survived without Survivor Resources, because I'm telling the honest to God's truth, but I felt abandoned. And the people in the group, I'm not alone.
Just being able to go there every night and have people to talk to who've been through the same thing is a blessing.
The nonprofit started nearly 30 years ago at the request of the former head of homicide for St. Paul Police. He saw the despair from families of homicide victims and the need for resources. It's now grown to help others, too.
We provide resources for people who have lost loved ones to homicide, as well as a couple other things, suicide, accidental death, and overdose.
Tony Plant is one of 3 staff members. She sets up the rooms where support groups meet and facilitates meetings.
The facilitator is there to kind of keep people moving, so you want to give everybody a chance to talk, at least to some extent.
It's a space for people to say whatever they're feeling without the worry of being judged.
A lot of crying, usually, generally speaking. We have people that have lost people 10 years ago that still come back because they're looking for closure. And then we have people that have lost somebody last week.
People are helping each other, kind of.
Oh, exactly. That's what the beauty of a support group.
The need for this kind of group became even more apparent during the pandemic. As they went virtual, they started getting calls from across the country.
People will call in from other states and say, I can't find anything. I can't even find a group, not to mention one that's free.
Now back in person, they still make room for people to Zoom in, knowing grieving happens in its own way, on its own time.
It becomes a part of you. But learning to live with that is the part that we try to add to the equation.
They made this little plaque here in honor of Thomas Harrigan.
After 3 years of going to weekly meetings,
Years of service, 2013 to 2019.
the Harrigans know their grief has changed.
It's not the same. You're not anguishing it over 24 hours a day, every day, but it's there in the back of your mind. And there are certain triggers. I want to scream, or I want to weep, or both. And then it passes.
But it will always live inside them.
The hardest part now is I very much want to go on with my life, but I don't want to leave my son behind.
The groups meet once a week in St. Louis Park, St. Paul, Apple Valley, and Forest Lake. They offer other kinds of support like logistics after a person has died, help navigating the courts, and resources for cleaning. Those left behind are left with the unexpected financial burden of burials and other costs, just as they are stricken with grief. But there is a place to turn to. It's a state fund for violent crime victims set up to help families for years to come. We explore how it decreases the financial cost of gunfire.
This is him just being goofy.
2 years have passed.
I think about them every day, all the time. Jasmine and Matthew were very close. They spent a lot of time together.
Since Angela Sturm lost her oldest kids to gunfire. Jasmine Sturm and Matt Pettis found murdered along with 2 others in a western Wisconsin cornfield.
I think about what they're missing with the milestones with their kids. I'm not paralyzed by it anymore.
In the days following, Sturm says there were so many decisions to be made in the midst of deep grief. And then there was the financial factor.
You shouldn't have to plan a funeral for your children. They should be planning yours.
She learned the state had a fund specifically to help families like hers following a violent crime. It covered the funeral and repast, totaling about $17,000.
It helped to ease that part of it. That was huge to me, the worrying about the finances and how we were going to cover all of this.
She says it allowed her to focus more on her family and other details needing her attention.
It lifts a lot of pressure off.
That's the mission behind the Crime Victims Reimbursement Program, formerly known as reparations.
We're reimbursing for losses that victims of crime experience after a violent crime.
Kate Weeks is the executive director of Office of Justice Programs, which oversees the fund. She says the dollars come from federal, state, and restitution.
It will cover everything from like homicides, assault, sexual assault, domestic violence, sex trafficking, child abuse, etc.
It reimburses funeral and burial costs, lost wages and dependent care, medical bills, mental health, and trauma care. Over the last year, the state paid $3.7 million to families, mostly for homicide and assault, for economic support, medical bills, and funeral costs. There are eligibility requirements. You must file a police report within 30 days, file a claim within 3 years, and must cooperate with police and prosecution.
We just really want to make sure that people know and understand and can access the program.
About 13% were denied. Reasons include the claim wasn't made in time, the person wasn't a crime victim, there was no proof of a crime, or the person submitting the claim committed a crime. While staff goes through most claims to make sure the requirements are met, there's an appointed 5-person board to look at cases that aren't as clear-cut.
Some of the things that we look at as a board is some of the applications where staff may have had additional questions around the approval or the denial of it.
And they take on appeal, says Kenosha Davenport, who's also executive director of the Sexual Violence Center.
This isn't a scary process. It is a part of their rights to be able to make that appeal.
She says the board has to follow the law, and they want to be part of helping people heal. Each claim has a $50,000 limit over a lifetime. That brings comfort to Sturm, who joined a homicide support group to process her pain, and she recently started a podcast to try to help others.
Beyond Goodbye is a podcast that explores death, dying, and coping with loss.
She says it's helpful to know in the back of her mind she has the support to go back to therapy.
It's a deterrent for people to go and get some therapy. But to have that covered and be able to, know that I can go and get this help that I need, and then they're going to help and cover with that, that's big.
She hopes others use the resources.
Use it, reach out, ask. It's available for you to help ease just a little bit.
The program is adding more positions to be more visible in the community and to help families access the fund. One young woman knows firsthand what it's like to be a bystander struck by gunfire. Next, Daijah Hammonds gets real about life today and why she's not letting her injury define her. It's a story that's played out hundreds of times in recent years. Minneapolis police raced to the scene of a shooting. This one happened in 2022, a year where 544 people were shot. Here, one person died and 3 others got hurt. Daijah Hammond survived what police called potentially life-threatening wounds. Now, 2 years later, she's still recovering, but making big strides. Daijah shares her personal journey with the cost of gunfire. Daijah Hammonds welcomes us with a smile.
These are spasms. They love to go crazy.
The 22-year-old lives in a group home, a place to help her become more independent.
I lost 5 calories there. You have to relearn how to sit up, how to eat, how to crawl, how to stand, and how to walk.
She's been through a lot since March of 2022 when police responded to shots fired. Daijah says she was helping chaperone a birthday for a friend's younger sister that turned into a party at a rented home in South Minneapolis. Sometime after 2 in the morning, she was trying to get people to leave when bullets pierced the home.
It just came through the windows, and I was the first one hit, and then I heard like a zing, like an electric feeling and sound, and then I remember like my body felt like it deflated, and then we were on the floor.
She says when a friend tried to turn her, she knew it was serious.
I started feeling the pain then and I started kind of panicking, and all I knew was I couldn't go to sleep because I knew that I probably wouldn't make it if I went to sleep.
Another part that stays with her, she was next to a young man who was also shot.
Unfortunately, I seen him take his last breath, and that's probably out of everything the hardest thing. I think about him every day, and I will for the rest of my life.
First responders rushed Daijah to Hennepin Healthcare, where she'd spend 2 months recovering. She was told she'd never walk again.
The bullet hit my vertebrae, and a piece of my vertebrae was lodged into my spine.
She spent time in physical therapy at Abbott.
Come on, why are you going?
You're okay.
I'm gonna really get mad.
Take a couple deep breaths, you're okay.
And then at Courage Kenny, where she still goes to PT today.
You're okay.
I forget a lot of the times that I was shot until I'm like, because now I'm in this situation, until I get a moment to like sit and be like, whoa.
Good step. That was a good one. Nice.
She's not letting her injury limit her.
I'll use my spasms to boot and boost me up, and then I basically have to engage my spasms to stand.
Using braces on her legs to stand.
Muscles, look at you.
And then walk.
The strength it takes is tremendous. I use about 95% of my arm strength and 5% of my legs. And with my leg braces, it's mostly my legs and my core.
I mean, where did you find that?
I heard the doctor say, hey, you're not gonna walk again. But what I heard was, I have to prove you wrong.
Daijah says the physical injury affects so many other aspects of her life.
People think people who are in wheelchairs are just, they can't walk or they can't stand. No, it's like literally all the function from here down. So bladder, bowel. So that was probably the hardest thing out of it all. I cared about having to cath and my bowel program. I felt very self-conscious.
She says shaving her head after being grazed by bullets on either side threw her confidence.
This is the first time it really hit me that it was me going through this. I didn't recognize who was in the mirror.
And then there was the mental recovery.
After it happened, I couldn't get sleep because of the nightmares. I was attacked in my sleep every night.
She goes to therapy to work through what she's been through.
Even on my hardest days, I will, if I have to strap on a smile, I really will. I do it all the time, every day, honestly.
And to learn how to process the dark moments.
Where do you think you'd be right now without therapy?
Without therapy? Oof. Without therapy, I probably wouldn't be here. I probably would have ended my life, honestly.
She learned about the cost of gunfire far too young. At 5, her dad died after being shot multiple times. A close friend lost his life to gun violence in 2022. She now wants to focus on the future and helping young people. What would you say to someone who's thinking about picking up a gun to solve a situation?
That bullets don't have names and that they don't care who it hits. So I just want people to understand that conflict can be resolved without violence.
Her case remains unsolved. If you know anything, please call the police. The number of patients treated as a result of gun violence is crushing healthcare workers. Just ahead, we talk with the lifesavers at Hennepin Healthcare, the doctors and nurses on the front line caring for gunshot patients day after day. And hear from a last responder, a death investigator with the Hennepin County Medical Examiner's Office, shares how she takes care of herself so she can take care of others. The pandemic took a real toll on our healthcare workers, but right now, another public health crisis has become just as crushing. Last year alone, Hennepin Healthcare treated 283 shooting victims. That averages out to nearly 1 a day. 85% of them are now survivors. Healthcare workers on the front line share the very real cost of gunfire at the hospital in Minneapolis.
All you see is young, previously healthy people in pain and suffering and scared.
There's not one kid that doesn't make it that doesn't impact you.
It can be devastating and heartbreaking.
I feel that the general public probably doesn't have any idea of just how bad it is.
It's a public health emergency crisis.
These healthcare workers see the cost of gunfire regularly. It's lights and sirens when there's a call for a person who's been shot.
It's a fast-paced, fast action.
Hennepin EMS transports a victim right to Hennepin Healthcare, the state's busiest Level 1 trauma center.
And they have a team waiting for us. And it's a quick handoff.
The care starts right through those doors in what's called the stabilization or STABE room. It's where doctors and nurses treat hundreds of gunshot wound patients.
Most days we see someone who's been a victim of gun violence. And it ranges from non-lethal glancing wounds to multiple gunshot wounds to the head and chest.
Dr. Jim Miner is chief of emergency medicine.
It's tragic. It's preventable. It's death and destruction of young, healthy people who don't need to be dying.
They work to stabilize the patient.
Figure out what's going on, figure out where they're bleeding.
What does full speed look like?
It's really, really fast. Our idea of right away is multiple people with a lot of skills going as fast as they can and doing everything all at the same time. Seconds make a huge difference.
That's when a trauma surgeon like Dr. Kofi Fosu enters the picture.
Bullets are unique in the sense that the injuries they cause can be so unexpected. High-impact gunshot wounds, they can be unpredictable.
He rushes a patient to the operating room.
In the operating room, that's where we do our, the crucial part of our job. Really, our goal is to see what's injured, to stop any bleeding, to stop any contamination. Ultimately, we want to save a life.
Emergency department nurse Evan Traywin is in the midst of the continual trauma care.
It's mind-numbing for people that wouldn't really see that, obviously. It's mind-numbing for me who's seen it for the last 20 years, to tell you the truth. And I have to put it aside. Because I don't know what's coming in the next 15 minutes after that.
He's found parenthood has changed when he needs to pause.
I do have to step away when those children come in that are close to the age of my children. I know that circumstances could just be flipped and I could be in their situation with my children.
It's a stark reality of who's being impacted in the community.
There is something definitely different about taking care of children that have been injured by firearms. The fact that I even have to say a statement like that.
Dr. Ashley Bjorklund is the medical director of the pediatric ICU.
Sometimes it's more intense. Some of these kids are on ventilators, or certainly there's kids that we think they survive initially and progress to need the support for end-of-life care.
it takes a toll.
We're trained to sort of work through it, but we also do, I think in pediatrics we're pretty intentional about taking time to reflect upon the care that's being provided and how it's impacting us.
And how it changes how they manage at work and at home.
More stress, right? More emotional time that I need to spend recovering from the care that I provide for patients daily. A lack of feeling safety sometimes for my own children. I text parents before they go to the house, you have firearms, are they stored appropriately? That's a common text that I send.
Pediatric nurse Daniela Morales says she creates firmer boundaries with family and friends.
If there's any sort of unneeded stress or drama, I have to draw the line. Like I just can't, I feel like I can't tolerate as much in my personal life anymore.
The hard comes with this life-saving work.
Man, it's hard to see people hurt so frequently, and it's hard to just constantly be processing all of the loss of just lives that are just senselessly destroyed.
You see really this violence day in and day out. Sometimes you just have to remember why you're doing what you're doing.
These days, there is always another call, another patient with a gunshot wound to help.
You can be frustrated with society, just the recklessness of what people are capable of doing to other people.
Another run for a paramedic.
It affects everybody. And if you're not coping with it in a healthy way, it will eat you and you won't be in this field at all.
Those are the first responders. And then there are the last responders, the one who come after a life is taken by gunfire. Death investigators with the Hennepin County Medical Examiner's Office respond to crime scenes. They are immersed in the details to help determine a cause of death. We talked with a longtime investigator about the cost of gunfire. This is where Lisa Estes starts.
This is my scene, babe.
Packing up to head out to a call when someone is a victim of gunfire.
We're going to be the eyes and ears for the pathologist when we're out on that scene and gather as much information as we can.
This is Estes' 24th year with the Hennepin County Medical Examiner's Office.
It's just being able to help others through a very difficult time.
She's right there on crime scenes, a last responder, arriving after the lifesavers, police, fire, and EMS.
We know we all are going to die at some point, but to see the violence and some of the injuries that we have to see, it can be, for the average person, extremely traumatic.
Estes credits her love for people and a former career as a funeral director with how she's able to stay composed.
Here, you've got to be a voice for the deceased and help the next of kin. I know what to expect, and I can deal with my feelings while I'm there because I have to be professional and get the information.
And all these years later, the trauma can still be too much to bear.
But when you're right there with them, I have to remain professional, but it could be just tearing me apart.
What is it like when you show up to a scene and it's a teenager?
It breaks my heart. They haven't had a chance to live their life. Breaks my heart. It's just senseless. And in part, it makes you angry. So I guess there's some anger there because it's like, really?
They have ways to manage at work.
So we talk amongst ourselves to help, deal with the pain.
The new office has quiet rooms.
Here's one of them. You can make it a couch, just lay down or sit. Say, I love it. Turn the lights off if you want. Be quiet. Medical examiner, this is Lisa.
And she takes steps of her own.
You were calling about your father.
So she can continue to take care of others.
You have to kind of shut that off and do things that take care of you, whether it be reading, listening to music, getting a massage, doing those self-care things, because you're going to need it the next time you go to work. All right, then, you take care. Bye-bye.
Death investigators work 3-day weeks with 12-hour days. They also respond to any accidents, suicides, suspicious deaths, and deaths of people under age 55 with no significant medical history. Honesty and healing through writing. Still ahead, young kids sharing what's on their mind when it comes to tough topics like gun violence. Then, don't shoot guns, shoot hoops. How a gunshot survivor is bringing kids together through basketball. What's driving him to try to change outcomes for kids. Art and spoken word can help break down barriers and allow people to share openly when it comes to tough topics like gun violence. The nonprofit Art is My Weapon is working with a young group from the Doorstep Foundation to do just that. We were there to capture the conversation and to understand the cost of gunfire on our kids.
I'm gonna ask y'all a few questions in a minute.
This group.
What concerns you in the community? You said there's one thing that scares you in the community.
Is being led by artist Sean Garrison.
This is gonna be the foundation of y'all creative writing.
Kids from Hennepin County asked to explore their feelings.
There's been a lot of shootings lately.
Racism.
Real issues on young minds.
Your word is police brutality. I'm curious about that. What's one of your 5 words?
Sad.
Sad? Why does that make you sad?
That's how, like, George Floyd.
Mine's just gun violence.
You say gun violence?
Yeah.
Woo. Tell me about it.
I feel annoyed because they're just shooting each other for no apparent reason.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like we can try to stop them.
One of the words that I chose for violence was confused, because when we kill each other, that's not helping the situation at all.
Sharing thoughts.
Little black boy, do not be afraid of racism.
Writing words.
Me smelling the gunpowder makes me sick.
Turning them into poems.
Confused because the people died.
That matter.
Mine is about gun violence. I feel sad. I feel mad.
Sit with what they said for a moment. We thank this group for being brave to so boldly share what concerns them. A man who knows firsthand the impact of gun violence is now using that knowledge to help others. Tommy McBrayer started Don't Shoot Guns, Shoot Hoops. The goal of his nonprofit is somewhat self-explanatory. As we found, basketball is just one part of what these young men are learning.
Let's do it together. Hard work on 3. 1, 2, 3. Hard work.
This is where they come together.
All right, ready?
On the court.
Let's go, Rob.
Teenagers from around the metro, different backgrounds, with more than basketball in common.
Ball in.
Tommy McBrayer brought them together.
Man, the goal is like to prevent gun violence in one community at a time.
Line it up, purple.
He knows from experience.
I was selling weed just to pay my rent and had a drug deal go bad. I ended up tied up, shot, left for dead in the hallway of a duplex at 20 years old. And right there, that was the first time that it was a wake-up call. You know, either you want to go down that route still or you want to change your life.
He survived and says he straightened out his life. Still, 10 years later, he was shot again, this time by someone he considered family.
Conversation going the wrong way, and I ended up getting shot 2 times in my stomach just in July of 2019.
He worked on his own healing, physical, mental, and emotional, and fully looked at the community around him.
Seeing a lot of my friends die from gun violence, go to jail from gun violence, just feel like I need to do something about it.
All right.
He took his shot.
Okay, and then the next person.
And started Don't Shoot Guns, Shoot Hoops.
Get it up there, get it up there, get it up there.
There's too many people just shying away from the issue. You know, they're not being bold about saying stop gun violence. So I want to be bold. I want to be bold. There's no hidden agenda.
Purple team, green team.
The nonprofit reaches out to schools to find students who can benefit from being part of the program. Some have experienced the cost of gunfire in their own lives.
I came to this program because I lost my brother, to keep my mind off of that situation.
John Tavian's brother, Jonte Hudson, was gunned down at Mall of America in 2022. He says being here helps with the pain.
I can interact with more people, talk about things, and then just have fun at the camp.
Terrence Heron calls basketball his outlet.
It's kind of like therapy, almost.
He says he's learning from the coaches after also losing his brother to gun violence.
It's they came back from crazy situations that I wouldn't think would be possible. You know what I'm saying? For example, getting shot, losing family members and not retaliating. And the fact that they pushed that aside and leveled up themselves from that situation is really inspiring.
McBrayer says the goal is to lead with love.
Woo! that was nice.
to help these young men make positive choices for better outcomes.
Just staying busy, just not like indulging in gun violence in general. Just making sure I'm just doing something with my life in general.
Good work, Purple. Good work.
While intertwining messages of nonviolence, discipline, compassion, and work ethic into the game.
Do your thing, let's go.
You become a better leader, then you're a better leader in the household. You're a better leader with your friends. You're a better leader in the school. If you get a job, you're a better leader at the workplace. So that's where we're trying to install just leadership qualities that they probably didn't think they had in them.
Boys and men on 3, family on 6. 1, 2, 3. Boys and men. 4, 5, 6. Family. Let's go, baby.
This camp came at no charge to the students. Most of the funding for the charity comes from the State Office of Justice Programs. They also host midnight basketball on select Fridays. Thank you for joining us for The Cost of Gunfire. You can watch this WCCO News special anytime on WCCO.com. For photojournalist Grant Verdon, I'm Jennifer Mayerle.